Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Socially Distant Lawyer, and Happy New Year 2025.
Happy New Year.
I'm Mitch Hayes.
I'm Greg Vinogradsky.
And we have some developments. Greg, can't believe it. We're on day 2 of the year and we've got developments from our year-end recap. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, things move quickly. Just when you get to relax for the holidays with your family, you get emails blasting you nonstop about crazy things happening. So we talked about the last couple episodes of Corporate Transparency Act, it's called the CTA, what it required and the deadlines and all the fun litigation going on around it. And things moved really, really quickly.
Yeah. So for our loyal viewers, we did film the episode before the holiday break, and we said that there would be some updates coming through to you in 2025, and here we are. So there's Grieving Families Act news, and there's CTA news. Why don't you kick us off with the CTA, Greg?
So CTA, basically requires almost all corporations to comply with on a federal database and submit its beneficial owners that are in substantial control of the association to register their name, address, and driver's license. Everybody was ramping up all year, educating corporations, educating condominium associations, and really any incorporated community associations on what to do and how to comply. 12/3/24, there was a lawsuit in Texas where a federal preliminary injunction, nationwide injunction, was granted, which basically stayed the enforcement. So on 12/3/24, all of us attorneys advised all of our clients that you do not have to comply with the CTA. That was all great. People were relieved because they really were struggling to really come to terms with who had to comply. There was a lot of back and forth as to whether people would resign from their positions on a board, whether they would comply or not. So on 12/23, that nationwide injunction was vacated, and they reinstated the CTA requirements and extended it to January 13th to comply. So immediately we all started writing to our clients and saying you have until January 13th, but you have to comply again. And a couple of days later, I guess, the holiday season, Christmas, I don't know what happened, a different panel in the federal court decided, same circuit, same lawsuit, same everything, said, no, we're gonna reinstate the injunction. So what does all this mean? What do you think this means?
It means we don't have to do anything. It's voluntary reporting at this point, right?
It means whatever we're telling our clients on December 3rd is back in effect, and everything since then is nonsense, and it doesn't have to apply. So this is kind of the stuff that we're dealing with on a daily basis, and it's important to tell our clients as soon as we get this information, because they're going out spending money on hiring companies that are going to register for them. They're holding elections for board members for condos to get appointed, and telling them that they have to comply with this to stay on the board. There's a lot going on, and that's where we are as of today.
Today, yes.
Yeah. Grieving Families Act.
Grieving Families Act is the next big thing that we talked about. I feel like we've been talking about this since we started SDL.
Yeah.
Grieving Families Act in New York was the law to modify and amend the wrongful death statute, which is like 150, 60 years old, that's been on the books. So it's been 2 years now that we talked about that the New York Governor Hochul has vetoed the Grieving Families Act. Now, we got to the end of December of this year, 2024. It was up for the third time. And so it was vetoed again for the similar reasons as had already been conveyed.
Right.
Basically, what the Grieving Families Act was doing all the entire time that it's been up has been expanding the definition of who can recover economic claims for the decedent. Right. Usually it was limited to the decedent's recovery, economic and medical expenses is what the recovery was going to be. The proposed law was going to expand that into the original proposed one a couple years ago, into a number of familial relationships.
Right.
The revised version that was just vetoed this year was going to still expand it, but it was going to follow inheritance rights, and it was still expanded to spouses, but it would follow the inheritance systems that would be built-in mechanisms to safeguard that. It was also going to drop the statute of limitations from 3.5 years to 3 years, and decrease the time that it could go back from retroactively from 2018 to 2021. So those were the modifications that were going to be made from the last veto.
So it sounds like some concessions were to expand who can recover under the wrongful death statute, but limit the time period when they can file suit for that recovery, right? So they try to kind of compromise this time around?
Right, so they thought that by doing that, maybe it would get across the governor's desk, which clearly it did not. Bipartisan support, but still the economic effect in New York was what the governor has consistently said, is that it hasn't been studied enough that this law would have the effect that it's desired, the desired outcome to protect the grieving families and not be at the expense, the detrimental expense of physicians, hospitals, corporations, pretty much, and insurance companies.
I'm sure there was a lot of lobbying on the insurance for the insurance companies, for hospitals and things like that, to try to show the effect that this would have in New York on the ability to write policies.
Right, because premiums are going to keep going up and it's going to be harder to insure. Everyone agrees that there has to be some type of modification with the law. It's just, what is that going to be? So here we are, 2025. The veto it's been vetoed. Legislative session starts on the 8th of January, and I assume one of the sponsors of the bill has already said, I'm going to sponsor it again in this session. The other co-sponsor of the bill is retiring from the legislature. So we're going to see another version come up, which is going to have bipartisan support, and we're going to be talking about this again throughout 2025 and see what happens.
So it sounds like the question is they just need to do a little more deep dive into the actual effects of this type of law. I don't know exactly what they're looking for to get that information so the governor is satisfied, but it seems like that would be the prudent thing to do for legislators that have been spending years on this type of legislation. That something needs to get done. We can't agree on what, so what type of studies need to be performed to ensure that there's a proper balance.
Right, I think that's what it's going to come down to, is what is going to be the cost involved, and you're going to need actuarial studies, which I'm surprised have not been done to the satisfaction of the governor, although that's kind of a floating scale as to what is going to satisfy the executive branch. But that's going to have to be done, some type of actuarial studies based on where the premiums are going to go, what's going to happen.
I wonder if this becomes like a greater discussion with some of those fraud claims that are going on, and whether there's going to be some kind of tort reform with that, and whether they want to kind of capture this into a greater bill, right? Maybe that's one way to push it through.
And it also would help if there's some type of cap on recovery, which good luck on getting passed in New York.
That might be tougher.
That is going to be significantly tougher, but I think that if there's a cap on recovery for economic pain and suffering, any type of cap, it would probably go a long way to advancing this bill. But again, they would have the people on the other side then that are proposing the bill would be objecting, because you're then limiting the right to recovery of the grieving family at the expense of tamping down the exposure. Yeah,
they're going to fight hard for that, for sure.
So I think it's just going to keep, it's cyclical. We'll see what comes up during the year. It's going to be proposed again. There'll be language, and we'll keep everyone updated.
Yeah.
So that's it for now. Happy New Year. Welcome back to everyone, 2025, and we'll see you next time.
Take care.